Money doesn't solve anything. It only creates more problems. So in this video, I'm going to go over a small list that I've made of the common problems people assume money solves. But when we look deeper into these problems and their relationship with money, we can see that that is not true or the case at all. And I will link all the sources and things in the description box. And if you have a problem that money solves that I didn't go over, leave it in the comments and we can discuss it and go through with it. But that's my premise. Money doesn't solve anything. It only creates more problems. So let's go into the list. The first problem that many people assume or think money solves is the problem of barter. Now, I'm sure everybody knows the story that we're taught throughout our lives that we had barter and before money we had barter and everybody bartered, and then money was created and invented to make it easier to get things, and we didn't have to deal with the coincidence of wants and all this stuff. Well, that is not true at all. That's not how money came into being. That's not why money was invented. And this barter idea that people have is a barter myth. It's not true. There's no evidence that societies in the past before money bartered to get things. And a lot of this comes from a man called David Graeber, and he goes through this in detail in one of his books called Debt, the First 5,000 Years. I highly suggest everyone read that book, and I will link the videos and things that he talks about this in depth in the description box below. So yeah, just look him up on YouTube and watch his things, but he goes into that. And it's not just him as well. There's been other anthropologists that have looked into this, and they have found no evidence that money was created and invented to solve this problem of barter. There's no evidence for that at all. So the next one is easier access to things. Money doesn't make things easier to access. It actually makes things harder to access. So, and I've heard people talk about this and say this, well, if we didn't have money, how are we going to access things? Money makes it easier to access things. And I think that's completely not true at all. It actually makes things harder to access because, well, I did a video in one of my more popular videos on a look into a moneyless society, and I go over how with money you're actually making it harder to access things because now you have to take it into account, you have to worry about it. It's something that you need to use your time and energy to get access to things. And if we didn't have the concept, we could access things straightforward and we wouldn't have to worry about it. So it would make things easier to access, and it would be better for all people if that was the case. Money doesn't solve this problem of easier access to things. It just makes it harder. So the next one is motivation. Now, motivation and money, it's a very interesting thing because yes, money to some degree can motivate people to do things, but if we look at how our society works, money gives us access to things, right? In our current society, we use money to access things. And that's the reason people want it. And, because of this, we hold a high, we put a lot of time and energy and social significance on the idea of money itself. And that's really what's motivating people, because it gives people access to things. It gives people, social significance, and that's what we value in our current system, is having a lot of money. And that's really what is the motivator of people with this concept. And I did a video in depth on money and motivation, and I suggest you watch that. And then also with money and motivation, a guy named Daniel Pink has a book called Drive, and he talks about the motivation being mainly mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And that's really the main drive for people. That's really what motivates people. It's not money per se. It's those things. I also just recently watched a video on the labor shortage when it comes to trades and trade jobs, that they're having a problem finding people to do these things, even when they are increasing the pay. So just because they're increasing the pay doesn't mean more people are motivated to do these things. So yeah, that's a big deal, because if money motivated people to do things like so many people say that it does, then why is it that we're having a hard time finding people to do things even when we increase the pay to do those things, And money also can motivate people in negative ways. Money has a lot of negative motivators as well. The profit motive itself has done so much damage and harm to our species and the planet as a whole when we think about it, this whole idea of being greedy and getting money no matter what, destroying people's lives and the environment at any cost just to make a profit. So in that sense, money is being a negative motivator and does more harm than good. So there's that. So the next one is a unit of account. The measurement, we have to, we value things, and then we put this price, and it gives us the value. But the thing with this is it's completely made up, and it doesn't really actually tell us the value of that thing. It's just a made up price that people put on the good, which this price can change and does change constantly based on numerous things, and prices fluctuate all the time, and value itself comes down to the person and is largely circumstantial. So a good example of this is, if you need food, you're going to value food more when you're hungry and you need the food than if you were full and you didn't need the food. So it's largely circumstantial and comes down to the really the individual, and putting a number or a monetary price on something doesn't actually really do anything. It doesn't really tell us a lot about the product and what it really means to people. It's just a number that can change and does change constantly. It really means nothing overall, and we don't need it. Why do we have to put numbers on things and prices on things and make up these numbers and just throw them on there and live like that? I mean, it's ridiculous. But anyway, the next one that I have on the list is tracking and redistribution. I've heard people actually say that money helps with this, and it doesn't, because we can track and redistribute things and manage our resources without money. We don't need money to do this. It just makes things harder because of what money allows us access to, and that's why we put so much time and energy into it, right? But we don't need money to track and redistribute and manage our resources. We can do all of that without money, and if we didn't have to worry about money, then it would be a lot easier to do those things, because with money we have to take that into account unnecessarily. So it makes things more difficult. We're adding something on that we don't need, right? And again, we can do all these things without money. We don't need to have money to manage and track and redistribute our resources. We have computers, calculators, GPS, the number of people. We can get data on these things without needing money to help us in any way with these things. And so lastly, I'll get into some recent examples that we have to illustrate clearly of how this concept is causing more problems. So with recently the pandemic, people were having problems with rent, because they couldn't work, because they had to stay home, and they were having problems paying their rent. Again, this is a problem that is unnecessary and ridiculous that people were having to deal with because of the concept of money itself, right? And we wouldn't have these problems if it wasn't for the concept of money. And these are recent problems. The next one that is very recent was the winter storm that hit Texas and a large part of the South, right? So in this instance, people, they couldn't go to work because of the weather, and they were having problems with their power and their electricity and water, etc., and they were getting charged electricity bills, insane amounts of electricity bills, and that they were getting charged to pay. And all of these things come back to the concept of money that these people are having to deal with because of the concept of money. And these are just two very recent examples. And we could probably sit here all day and week and year after year going through the problems that people are having to deal with because of the concept of money very recently and throughout history. This concept solves absolutely nothing, and it's only creating more and more problems, and it's just going to get worse and worse as time goes on, like we're literally seeing right now with those two very recent examples that I just gave, with the pandemic and rent and the winter storm and the electricity bills. So the solution here is to get rid of the concept of money completely and stop having to worry about these ridiculous problems that this concept is creating, because it's unnecessary. So that's all I have to say for this video. Thanks for watching. And as always, get rid of money.